The effects on Prince Andrew will reach far beyond the U.S. courtroom, of course, across the pond. Royal commentator Hillary Fordwich joining us now to talk about the impact this case is having in many British quarters. Hillary, good morning to you.
Pleasure to be with you, Adrienne.
Well, he's not facing any criminal charges. This is only civil. But is there any difference that makes, especially in terms of how the public views him?
I don't think so. The damage has already been done in the court of public opinion. I think one of the issues, of course, is with regard to the military titles. They have been in abeyance. He actually holds 9 honorary military titles, and all of those have been in abeyance since this is all broken. The top military brass actually has said that this is a toxic environment for him to be in. This is untenable, all of his conduct. And actually, it comes down to the Queen to strip him of those titles, but very much the top brass hopes, and I think nobody can speak for the nation, but really everybody is hoping he's going to do the decent thing and step back and willingly step back from them. However, there are those that are divided because, of course, one is innocent until actually proven guilty, but it's very much viewed that if this does go through court, and of course we know that tomorrow the judge is going to rule, or today's Tuesday, today the judge is going to rule if this will actually go to trial, it is damaging either way to the entire royal family in the court of public opinion.
Could he be stripped of his title, the Duke of York?
Well, he could be. The last time, there's actually something called the Deprivation Act, the Deprivation of Titles Act, and that was in effect many years ago. In 1917 was the last time that it was used because 4 German nationals, of course, were removed of their peerages in the House of Lords due to the First World War. It could happen. However, that decision, unlike the military titles, that decision does not reside with the Queen. It actually is constitutionally has to go through and be voted by statute by the House of Commons and the House of Lords, and then it will be by the Queen's approval. Rather like we have here in the US, we don't just have one branch of government that makes all the decisions. Same thing in the UK. But that could, of course, happen if that was by public demand. I will say one thing definitely about the Queen. She is very savvy and very sensible about protecting, as we know, the crown, and she will do the right thing. She is in a difficult position here because, of course, the public, the swell up is that people want them to be removed.
It's just interesting because, again, as you mentioned, he's innocent until proven guilty. That photo, perhaps the most damaging piece of public evidence that we've seen. But what happens if he is found innocent? I mean, he's largely stepped away from his royal duties anyway before these allegations, or rather when these allegations came out. But if he is found innocent in this civil case, would you say the damage has already been done, or would you say that it will be, something that people move on from?
I don't think that he can ever clear his name because, as you mentioned so aptly, that photograph depicts him there with Virginia Giuffre. But also, it's, he's stood by Ghislaine Maxwell, and she's also now being convicted. His association with such types. One of the things, in the British royal anthem is, our noble queen, our gracious queen. His behavior is not viewed to be either noble or gracious. And these types of people that he's been associated with, and of course, we've had many other reports about things that have occurred in terms of him visiting and staying in Jeffrey Epstein's house for 4 days to break off their friendship. I don't think many people really do that. So I think that it was his disastrous interview. He actually had what they call in the UK, and I think here too, but a home goal. He basically shot himself in the foot with that interview because he said probably too much there about that friendship. So I think, yes, he's been damaged in the court of public opinion. Overall, the bottom line is everybody is hoping that he will do the decent thing. The decent thing is to step down himself, not just from abeyance from those titles, give up those titles, step down, remove himself, because he's putting a shadow right now over the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, which is to take place now this year in 22 in June. He needs to do the decent thing for the Queen and for the royal family and for the entire monarchy, for the institution.
It sounds like quite a bit at stake there. Guilt by association, maybe a lesson that so many of us have to be reminded of from this very public case. Thank you so much, Hillary. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click on the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.